like to start off with a couple specific questions. Todd, you are in the real estate profession, again, working for BF Saul, which has real estate development and hospitality as its large industry sectors. You're always out there constantly looking for the trends, suffering through market realities. I understand that you've been out in the community of late taking the temperature, so to speak. Can you share some of your recent assessments, knowledge?
Absolutely. Is this working? Okay. Gotta get close. So first of all, thanks everyone for coming and thanks for inviting me to be on the panel. Just to let everyone know from the emails I got from Kevin Ash, the picture is not my graduation picture. It doesn't constitute fake news, but it probably is time to update that. So I look at housing really from a little different perspective. I really tied in, I think Dr. Sturtevant did a great job in her presentation, to economic development. Housing is really the lifeblood of economic development. As Suzanne Volpe says all the time, housing is where jobs go to sleep. And it's critical that we make sure that we have a workforce that attracts businesses and allows us to retain businesses in Loudoun County. So I spend a lot of my time during the day going out and speaking with various businesses in different sectors. As Maggie alluded, we have retail, we have a lot of apartments downtown, we have hospitality here in the county. So we're across a very diverse range. So just a couple anecdotal things. I spoke recently to one of our new tenants that opened up over in Lansdowne Town Center, Ford's Fish Shack. Shameless plug, if you have not been there, go. It's excellent. They have 3 restaurants in Loudoun County. Very, very successful restaurants. Employs 200 employees within the county. He had to delay his opening of his restaurant, and he had to open short 30 workers because he just can't find workers in Loudoun County. And a lot of that has to do with housing. Over 40% of his workforce is commuting in from outside the county. It's a big issue. From a retail perspective, and speaking with him, he said, he's opened 3 restaurants in the county, and it used to be, he looked at the demographics of Loudoun County and what's not to like. High incomes. When he looks, retailers look at the 1, the 3, the 5 mile radius as far as households, they'll look at the income in those radiuses. If you got money and there's people, well, they'll spend if you have a good product. So that was his #1 concern. And that has shifted now to one of the first things he's looking at is, can I find workers? Because it's great if there's enough people to spend money, but if I can't provide them service, I got nothing to sell. So, at this point right now, he's not going to be looking to open another restaurant like that because it's a major issue. Speaking with hospitality, hospitality has a huge problem with workforce. Hiring all the people in the industry there is very tough, and it would be hard to expand hotels here in Loudoun County. Talking to grocers, across the range, I'm not going to say specific names, they are all struggling, and it's a challenging situation for them to find workers. Even so much to the extent we were talking to a major grocery chain that was looking to expand in the area. They're not here. And when it went to their executive committee, we were ready to move forward with them, and it went to their executive committee, and the executive committee said, I can't afford to bring my existing employees up there because I can't find housing, and I can't find employers there, so no, we're not expanding. We're not going to that market. So they are not moving up to this market. And then when you talk to the overall business community, you can look at what's happening. Look at big companies. GE moved from suburban market into the city. McDonald's moved their headquarters from suburban market into the city. Marriott is a big one everyone heard about, everyone was fighting for. They're moving their headquarters into the city in a more urban area. And Nestle, which is now moving into Roslyn. They're all looking for this kind of urban environment, and it's something Loudoun really has to focus on creating. But I was speaking recently, went out and was meeting with some tenants, and there's a company called Credible Health Systems. It's a fast-growing, very innovative company, and I was speaking to their executive director, who was very, very articulate and very matter of fact. And I asked her, I said, and they located into Rockville Town Center, and I said, how important was it for you, and this is a growing business, how important is it for you to be in a mixed-use environment? And she said, when you look at our business, it's IT, it's backbone, it's cubes, and she said, it's not important from a business perspective that I'm in an environment of mixed use. However, for me to attract employees, which is they want to be able to go out and have multiple options for lunch. They want to be able to walk outside and go to the gym. They want to be able to integrate work life. So for that reason, they specifically chose to be in that environment. So when we look at housing, one, the type of housing we're providing and the environments we're creating, and then two, having enough housing to have that workforce to attract employers in, I think it's the most important economic development decision that we make. So I'll stop there.
Thanks very much. And Lisa, Dr. Sturtevant, if I may, quickly, you did touch on work that you've done in other jurisdictions. You're out there, and if you could just very briefly, where do we stack up compared to our region or other regions outside of metropolitan Washington?
Yeah, so I think, the issues that Loudoun County is facing in terms of the ability to produce and even preserve housing that's affordable to people who make lower wages is a challenge in jurisdictions throughout the Washington area. We looked in Arlington County, for example, and we found the rates of the share of households that were cost burdened has increased by 15 percentage points over the last 14 years, so that more than half of the renters in both Loudoun County and Fairfax and in Arlington County pay more than 30% of their income on housing. So the issues with housing affordability and the challenge with producing, a challenge with the high costs of land, the high cost of construction, the costs related to regulation, associated with building housing makes it real hard to produce housing that's affordable at the lower income levels here in our region, but throughout the jurisdictions.
General economic trends. And Kim, the Loudoun County Board is going to conduct a workforce housing summit this summer, fall?
Actually, like September.
September, thank you, Supervisor Volpe. And, hoping to develop policy to encourage increased delivery. Should the proposed federal budget with its significant corporate tax cut plan be adopted, what could that impact in terms of low-income housing tax credits, the willingness to dive into that type of financing and other programs to support delivery?
First, Maggie, thank you for referring to me as the largest affordable housing developer in Loudoun County, when you're the only Loudoun County.
Kim, we take what we can get, right? Yeah.
I'm going to cheat and do just two things quickly before I
Please
answer your question.
do. Please.
First, I have to say, we're here today because of Bob Clancher. In the last year of his life, Bob, while he was fighting cancer, worked full-time as an architect and still found time to come 4 hours every other Monday for 19 months to chair the housing, housing stakeholders group. Very important things came out of that group, very important recommendations. But at the end of it all, he said, if you don't do anything else, do the housing assessment so we can finally have the numbers to have the policy debate. So I'd like to recognize Bob for that, and then I'd also like to say thank you to Supervisor Volpe and Chairman Randall for really getting that funded and done. And
Yes.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you very much.
Second of all, I'm just going to put 4 numbers on the table because I want to, you've heard a lot of numbers this morning. I'm going to boil it down to 4. These are the 4 that I keep track of. Anybody listen to Marketplace last night on the way going home? No? Oh, yeah, all right. Kai Rizdal, the last number he had on the program last night. What's the median income of America? Family of 4, he didn't say that. He said 54,000, it's actually 56, but close enough for government work. Okay.
An extra cup of coffee to this lady in the front.
Okay, and the area median income in Loudoun County right now, just updated last month? 110. Virtually exactly both. Double. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, you got it from Lisa, the number of affordable workforce units that were short today, 10,000. She already stole my point. Economics 101. when you have too much money chasing too little supply, price goes up. So, as of the end of last year, the average 3-bedroom unit in Loudoun County, HUD fair market rent was how much? $2,144. Average market rent for a 3-bedroom apartment. Okay, last number. On Monday, the U.S. minimum wage went up to $9.20 an hour. Okay, if you have a 4-person household, both adults working full-time, 2,000 hours a year, that would be $36,000, which, if you just took the quick math, is about 30+% of Loudoun's area median income. But if you multiply by Lisa's 0.3, which is in the industry average, 30% is affordable, they can afford $1,022 a month for rent. You just heard my previous number, the average 3-bedroom rent in Loudoun County is $2,144. So, punchline, in the average household in Loudoun County, 4-person household, both adults have to be working full-time at double the minimum wage to be able to afford a 3-bedroom apartment.
Thank you for
Oh, wait,
the detailed answer to my
Answer the
question.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, Tim, we'll come back. We'll come back, because
All
I
right.
don't want to, we all, the point has been driven home, we understand.
What question would you like me not to answer?
Buddy, Buddy, please, can you expand on Todd's pretty good answer to a pretty good question? Buddy, we'd love to know, you're out there selling the county, meeting with people, encouraging them to come set up business, establish here. The quick question, at what point in that sales cycle or in that meeting does the issue of can I afford to hire people or can I afford to have my employees work here? When does that come up? And then what's your answer?
Well, it's always early. I mean, and the reality is that when we're out selling and, across the country, across the world, the things that we as Loudoners are most proud of are our high income and our low unemployment and our high education. Those aren't necessarily positives, because the question then becomes, well, you have virtual full employment, and it's not easy to live there, so that becomes a challenge. So that's early in the conversation, and we do have answers that we talk about. We talk about the regional workforce, and we talk about the policies and how 50% of our workforce still drives somewhere else to work, and we want to try to capture those. But the reality is that we do face a real challenge, and I've known about the housing problem since I've been here. What I haven't spent much time on until recently is the solutions or what the options are, because in reality, and we're very close, it's not wood, very close to landing a multi-thousand job deal. And the biggest problem, the biggest hurdle we have is, where are these people going to live? You need a continuum of housing options in order to really have a diverse economy. You have to have, from the beginning to the end, you have to have multi-generational and multi-skill level and multi-education. All of that is important to be part of that. And so, as we've kind of been looking at how to address these things, I've been really trying to get myself smart about it. Talking to Kim, talking to Kevin and Ward, talking to my counterparts in Fairfax and Arlington and Montgomery County, just trying to get smart. And I think there are solutions. But we need to have this discussion, and we need a champion. We need somebody who can really push forward on this and get things done. So, I'm excited that we're having the conversation, I'm excited that, we have the opportunity. The other thing is, I think that the business community's voice needs to be heard time and time and again during this process, because I think we can do studies and I can, tell stories. I think that the business community's voice needs to be heard.
Thank you very much, Buddy, and I think we as a chamber agree, and we need to stay very close to the summit that's coming up in September, and we need to participate. We need to have our voices heard, so that's the shout out to our chamber businesses. Let's get involved. Let's get involved with the Envision Loudoun conversation as it continues. You'll see news from us and from the Board of Supervisors about 5 new meetings set in June. So let's get out and get our voices heard. With regard to voices in the night, and this is a general question to anyone. Houses, rooftops, Loudoun County, 4-letter word. How can we change that view? What do we need to do? They're viewed as a drag on the tax base because of the services that they require: fire and rescue, schools, transportation, roads. How can we change that? How do we change the conversation? Perhaps it's just to have the conversation, but I'd love for you to interject. Go for it.
I'm the one that could probably get fired for saying yes, we need to change the conversation on housing. And we need to start thinking about a global policy of how we want to approach housing and not really look at it one application at a time. We have to kind of think about what do we want to be and how do we want to get there. And in order to have the diverse economy that we need, we really have to start thinking about our workforce. And when we start thinking about our workforce, we have to start thinking about the continuum of the workforce and the housing to host them. So, I think that the housing summit will be a great first start. But the conversation needs to change, and new voices need to be heard and be part of that conversation.
Thank you, and I think that goes absolutely to Suzanne Volpe's regular statement that a house is a job where is where. Thank God for my wingman. A house is where a job goes to sleep. And Kim, you're allowed back to the microphone.
Oh, thank you.
You're one of the folks in our community who has found a way to make these things happen. Can you offer not your technique and skill set, but how we change this, how we show that it's a good thing, how we show that building different housing stock is possible?
Sure. First of all, it has to be in the conversation. So hats off to the chamber for getting it from never on the agenda to here at the top of the agenda. Huge thanks to the chamber. Second of all, it has to be a priority, and it frankly was not on the agenda of the board of supervisors until this current board. Now it is. So hats off to that board and the leadership we know who's in the room that's helped that happen. And then we have to get smart about how we do it. And the answer is that we have to know how to do it locally to go out and leverage the state and federal money that's available. Mm-hmm. And we were, frankly, we didn't have the right zoning ordinance written until last year when the board finally got it fixed, so that we could go out and get our fair share of state and local funding. With the right regulations in place, I can bring back $7 to $9 in state and federal money for every dollar that the county puts up. In Arlington County, it's different math. I know that doesn't scale perfectly, but they take typical year. They take about $12 million out of their general fund and put it towards workforce housing. They've got a housing trust fund that's been in place for almost 30 years. The income from that plus the developer contributions is another $8 million. So, they're close to 20 million a year they're putting into, jump-starting housing, and then they go to VHDA and multiply that by 7 or 8. In the last 10 years, 85% of the state and federal money from VHDA has gone to Arlington, Fairfax, and Alexandria, and Loudoun got 15% because we had our ordinance written wrong. Now, thanks to this board, it's changed, and we're gonna, so we have the structure to do it. We still have to throw some money at it. Fortunately, we do have a good trust fund in place now. The county has about $24 million in their housing trust fund. We need to figure out how to get an application process to that fund to apply for it. But that's coming. No, that's gonna be a great jumpstart, and then in the process, the board has to figure out how to recycle that and replenish.
Todd, do you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that a little bit. I think when we look at the county, some of the things that we've been really, really successful at, and we look at what Buddy's done in kind of the data center industry or the data center capital of the world, one of the reasons that we didn't just talk about, we want to be the data center capital of the world. We didn't just say we have fiber, so we're good. Buddy actively went out, politicians actually went out, and they created incentives, and they worked with the state, and they created an environment for data centers to foster, and it's been extremely, extremely successful. We need to take that same approach towards housing. So if you want affordable housing, if we want housing that fits the missing middle that we hear people talk about, then you need to look at your proffers and your incentives that are in place. So right now, we incentivize, the way we do our capital charges or capital fees is based on housing type. But what you end up with is you're incentivizing somebody to build the biggest townhouse they can. So we end up with $1 million townhouses that are 4,500 square feet. That's not helping anybody. That's not creating housing diversity. So we need to say, well, this is what we want. Let's take a hard look at the policies. Let's actively find ways to incentivize them. And I think it's got to be something that is intentional. It's something we really got to go after.
Thank you, Lisa. Please.
I just wanted to pick up on this idea of new voices, bringing new voices to the conversation about housing. I think it's great that we're here. I think, as you think about the summit in September, and having worked in some local jurisdictions, that the idea of bringing together the partners that are going to be important later on, bringing them in early. I'm thinking about schools, right? I'm thinking about transportation planning, and I'm thinking, so having folks who aren't typically thought of as being partners on housing, but are going to be important to making the case to the broader public later on, having them have a seat at the table. That's a mistake Arlington made, frankly. They didn't get the schools folks involved early in their housing study, and so at the back end of the study, and the back end of the policy plan, there was a pushback. Oh, we need money for schools. We don't know how we're going to be able to accommodate all that growth in our schools, or so bringing the schools in early would be really important. The other point I'll just make is this is part of a conversation, right? Just because we are having this conversation we should remember that not everybody is at the same place that we are about the need for housing and economic growth. And there's a lot of good ways to start to think about how to have these conversations in public venues, online or whatever, showcasing not only data and research that support the need for housing, but also stories of successes both here in Loudoun County and across the region and frankly the country.
Thanks very much. That's excellent input. And again, I think it ties to our chamber's feeling that as we are deep in the midst of Envision Loudoun, now is the time for these conversations. And the time for Envision Loudoun is not just about land use, it's about infrastructure delivery. What do we need for future services? How are we going to move people? How are we going to support and educate our citizens? So now's the time. So I guess this is a real call to action for all of us. Pardon me, where's my vision? I think I have time for one more question that I'd like to ask, and then if we have questions from the floor, I think we'll open it up. Funny that I should ask this question, but perhaps for you, Buddy, what are your thoughts on how we can better leverage the arrival of Metro, operational in 2020, to improve the availability of affordable workforce housing?
Well, I think it's a cultural thing, and I think if there was one place where, I think that I was challenging Lisa's study is that I think that we are building Metro in large part because it does change the patterns of housing And it is kind of a shifter and will create some new environments. And I think that's really important. You know, to Todd's point, you know, every major prospect that has jobs that's looking to come to Loudoun County is looking to come around Metro or one of our town centers. Nobody that we're working with at all with a large job number is looking for anything but mixed use and walkable. I mean, that's just the fact. So the Metro has put us in conversations that we've never been in before, which is really, really good for Loudoun County. But it is a challenge for us to really now decide what we want those to look like and how we want them to be and how we are addressing all of our problems and getting this right. You know, Ricky Barker, our planning and zoning director, is here, and he spent a lot of time working on the Silver Line CPAM and the comprehensive plan, and we have to make sure now is the time to get it right, and now is the time to have this part of the discussion as part of that larger discussion. So I think Metro will change the way that we approach things, and I think that it can be a real boom for us, but we got to get it right now.
Thank you very much. Before we open the conversation up to the floor, I want to give you a little more information about the 5 upcoming public input meetings for our comprehensive plan review that goes under the tagline Envision Loudoun. The Board of Supervisors, the Envision Loudoun Stakeholders Committee, and the county staff really want to hear from the business community. Staff took the time to present to the Public Policy Committee yesterday, and again, they're having 5 more meetings spread throughout the county during the month of June. This is going to determine how we grow and flow for the next 5, 10, 20 years. So please try to attend one of the 5 upcoming meetings. And there you have, I'm pointing to slide. There you have it. Those are the dates of the public meetings. They'll be available on the county website. We'll send them out to the membership. And a little fun fact, if you can turn toward Grafton in the back of the room, please make a plan to attend one of the 5 upcoming meetings. On the way out of the door, you'll see a fishbowl. Place your business card in the fishbowl if you're interested in attending, and then we will reach out to you directly, giving you the details on the meetings, the dates, times, and a reminder. So, fishbowl. We would love to open up questions from the floor. As always, we ask that you be mindful, and it's a question, not dogma. We've been requested to make the content of this meeting available to members who were unable to attend. We're videotaping. If you don't wish to be on video, don't ask, but again, if you are still willing to ask your question, please wait for the microphone so that we'll have good audio.
That would have been good information for us to have before we started.
Buddy, regular chamber protocol, sorry. Supervisor Volpe, please.
Thank you. Any of you know me, no, I don't need a microphone. It is a short question, but I think it will help with your dialogue. Lisa, what is the percentage that you said was housing burden in Loudoun County?
30% overall.
But here's the key. When asked, you said that is basically based on gross income. So that's gross income.
That's the standard that allows for taxes and
Right,
everything.
and then the follow-up question that was asked by me, and I want all of these folks to hear it because it's even more dramatic, that if you're looking at net household income, I asked, could it be as then people being housing burden could be as high as 50% in Loudoun County at the board meeting, and you said yes.
That's not the way we calculate cost burden, so I'm a little confused
I know.
about the question.
When we were at the board meeting, you're looking at gross income.
That is absolutely true. Okay, gross income, yep.
And we asked the follow-up question, and I want everyone in the room to understand that it's not clear because they can't identify the net income. They couldn't do that comparison. But then in reality, if you're looking at housing burden, it could be as high as maybe 50%.
Right, so it's paying
Okay.
30% of your income, so it's not 30% of your paycheck, right, which is net income, but rather 30% of your gross income. So that's a very important clarification, for sure.
Yes. Yes, please, welcome.
All right, thank you very much, Beth Erickson with Visit Loudoun. Can my fellow stakeholders raise your hand real quick that are all part of the, okay. Many of us are facilitators and have been a part of the Envision Loudoun. I'm gonna give one last plug, I know you're hearing it a lot. We, as a business community, are not represented. We need to be there. Please make the time to come, 7 o'clock. They're fun, engaging, but really critically important. Your voice needs to be a part of the table. But real quick, this is gonna be a question for Todd or Buddy. When we look at different types of models of housing, because I think the study has been done on what we currently have in the pipeline or in inventory, what are you seeing as trends? Can you talk about group housing? Ways that we can look at bringing in additional bedrooms without needing additional services.
I can talk a little bit about that, and that is, Dr. Sturtevant and I, when we prepped for this, had a little back and forth on kind of housing preference and how those numbers fall out. And, I think the method they took is a very valid method, and they're the experts, and, it certainly makes sense. However, what I'm seeing in the market, from our general perspective, is there is a clear shift in preference towards a more urban lifestyle. And that has to do with overall preferences. And, you can see a lot of different things, whether that will continue, whether that will change. If I knew, I'd be a lot richer than I am now. But I do think there is a clear shift, and and there's also a part of it that has to do with, yes, there may be a preference. I actually live in Washington, D.C., and I would love to have a huge house in Washington, D.C. Yeah, 4 kids, a room would be great. I live in a row home. That's what I can afford, but my preference is, and I grew up in Loudoun. My family's been here since 1700s or whatever, but I couldn't do the commute to get to my job anymore. I was leaving before my kids got up. I was getting home after my kids got to bed, and it just wasn't a lifestyle that I could carry on. So we moved to the city, and I had to make a choice. And so there's preferences, but then there's also choices. And for many people, if they have a choice to live, maybe in West Virginia and to commute into their job, or to live in something smaller, hey, guess what? I'm gonna live in something smaller. And they want the single family home, but I've got trade-offs. So I think we're gonna see some shifts in that, and a shifts of a couple percentage points here and there makes a big difference in numbers. So I wouldn't get too caught up in the mix. I'd be more interested in making sure we're meeting supply, not in how we're meeting it, but that we're meeting supply. That's just my thought.
Yes, Kim? Oh,
And I'll
Please.
disagree only slightly in that we don't have the mix of type here either, that especially for young engineers and those types of people that they would like to be, they don't necessarily want to have lawns and hair and all that kind of stuff. So I would like to see a mix of type as well as a mix of affordability on the continuum. I think that's important.
and Kim, did you have a add-on? Thank you.
Yeah, our last project we opened was 98 units in Brambleton. I totally support the nighttime economy and the need to, build on the centers. But we fully leased up that building in 2.5 months, and it's 60% millennials. If you give them affordable rent, they'll show up. They don't care if there's a band downstairs. And second of all, I think a lot of the cute solutions like tiny houses and all of that you see in the newspaper, we get all of our financing through the HDA, and they have housing standards that are some of the best in the country. We're going to build good quality, traditional looking units, and the cute boutique stuff isn't going to happen.
Thanks very much. Pardon me, Delegate Minshew, and then we'll come to you. Thank you.
I'll start with Dr. Michael. Question for Dr. Thanks, Eric. Question for Dr. Sturtevant. I'm sure that Loudoun County is not the first county that has a robust economy with a low unemployment rate, with a possible shortage of housing in the not too distant future. My question is, on a national level, what have we seen in those cities and counties throughout our country where unmet housing needs are not being met? What does that do for job growth and economy? I mean, be it Bay Area, Austin, Texas, Portland, Oregon? What have you seen on a national level of those counties and cities that have gone through this phenomenon before?
So, I would love to be able to say to you, there is unrefutable evidence that if you don't build enough housing, that your economy is going to go in the tank, and that here's where it's happened. It's more insidious than that, right? So I'm thinking about the Bay Area, because I think that's a good example, right? It's sort of the DC area, hyper, like on steroids, sort of, in some ways, in that the housing costs are so high, and the employment growth is so strong in the height, that this is where you're seeing the engineers sleeping in their vans to go to that job, right? So you're not seeing the jobs leave yet. You're seeing people make these trade-offs that you couldn't imagine people making. So we can't look at the job data and say, oh my gosh, the jobs are leaving. Now they are leaving. Some jobs are leaving the Bay Area and are setting up shops. You're hearing stories about them going to Utah and to Oregon and to Washington, and allowing people to go to the satellite office and work remotely, since so many of the tech jobs allow for that. But what I've been struck by in these high-cost areas are these trade-offs I would never have imagined. School teachers couch surfing during the week so they can go teach at the San Francisco area schools, and then going 3 hours to their home on the weekends. These are young people who don't have families yet, so this is a lifestyle I wouldn't wish on anyone, but that they're doing in order to be in this. So I would argue that it's important for us to think about the repercussions in terms of sheer job numbers, but also what does it mean for the quality of life that you provide for your residents and your workers, that these trade-offs that people are being forced to make to be in an area that they love, to serve in a job that they love doing, and that really is a benefit to the broader economy. There's all sorts of those kinds of stories that we're starting to hear, and we don't want that here in Loudoun County or DC or Fairfax.
Thanks, that's a vital, a key point for the conversation.
And we do have research that shows that, that economies have been stagnated by the lack of housing. I mean, if you look at Austin and you look at high-tech places that had a really quick growth, you reach a point where not having enough housing does lead to out-migration of jobs, and will certainly stop you from getting high-job businesses to come into your community. So I think that there does reach a point where it stops because you can't get the employees you need.
Thank you, and Kim, we've got one more question here, I'm sorry, thank you. Yes.
Wait for the microphone.
Thank you.
As one of the few millennial homeowners in Loudoun, pardon me, sorry. Can you introduce yourself? Yes.
Sorry.
I'm Vinay Galloway with AHT Insurance, and as one of the few millennial homeowners in Loudoun, I have held 2 jobs since probably 2010, and it's just a way of life. If you want to live in Loudoun, you obviously have your day-to-day job, and then you have some sort of part-time. I haven't heard anything along the lines of how we are making or allowing people to kind of scale back to one job that will fulfill all of their needs, rather than having to kind of piggyback multiple sources of income in order to just make life in Loudoun sustainable.
And I thank you very much. That's a great point to hear. And of course, it's interesting because our income reports don't really speak to how many jobs the family has, which is why Matt Letourneau, Supervisor Letourneau, says we're not necessarily the wealthiest county in America. We're the hardest working because we have so many 2-income households. But that isn't even assuming the individual who carries several jobs.
Right, and we had talked a little bit about the retail and the restaurant workers and having a difficult time finding them, and I think you might have seen a slide that it looks like a lot of the retail workers actually do live here in Loudoun County. That data is a little misleading. Those are your second job holders, right? Those are the folks who work all day in a full-time job and then work at night, or they're maybe the young adult who just finished school, is living at home, working a part-time real-estate job. As you all know, retail is a lot of flux, but I feel like you see some of these second job holders in some of that data who are here because they have a full-time job and they feel lucky to be able to live in Loudoun, but they can only do that by taking on this second job in perhaps a retail restaurant.
Thank you very much. Very good insight. We appreciate the question. All right, Alan, one more.
Quick one to Kim. You touched on it, and Alan Hansen, DBI, you touched on it, but you need to spend.
Alan, grab the mic. Thank you.
Just a few seconds on the housing that we're looking at. Several people have said that affordable housing. Enough of us are of an age in this room that we remember HUD Section 8. It didn't look like the housing that you live in. Talk about what Windy Hill builds and why they build, and it has to do everything with financing.
Thanks, Ellen.
You have one minute.
The HDA, when they fund us, they're in for 30 years. They will only let us build with high quality material to their specifications. If you go to Brambleton, you can't pick out our housing. When I give a tour, that's what I do. Is I stop at the top of the hill and say, point out the housing, nobody can do it. Quickly, I'm going to run down the list. Of the 98 units that we have at Shreveport, if you subtract the half a dozen folks that are retired that live on Social Security, we have retail sales, 22 jobs, cashiers, car sales. We have 10 baristas, by the way. Education, we have 18. 10 of those are daycare workers, 8 are teachers. Dulles Airport, we have 15 employees there. Construction, 14 employees. Medical professions, 10. Hospitality, 10. Government, 6. I say basically, if you drop your kid at one child at daycare, one at school, grabbed a cup of coffee, and picked up a prescription on your way here this morning, you've already met 4 of my residents. They all work.
And one other insight, I'm not a panelist, I'm just speaking. One other insight about our property in a project in Fairfax County, high-rise construction, 450 units, 19.5% workforce housing, certainly at the higher range of the AMI, but it's been doable from a financing perspective, and it has provided incredible vitality. It gave us a huge bump on early lease-up by getting those 90 units occupied very quickly. So in terms of stock and type, that's another example. It is 10:01. We're a minute late. I would like to thank you all very much for your attendance.